the orphan who turned into a hornbill. Long ago, there was an orphaned boy who lived with his relatives. They treated him cruelly, giving him the hardest tasks in the fields and feeding him nothing but rice mixed with dirt, along with a porcupine spine to pick through the filth. Though he worked alongside other young villagers, he always ate alone, ashamed of his meager meal. Among the villagers were two kind-hearted girls who noticed his solitude. They wondered why he avoided everyone. So one day, while he was washing his hands before eating, they secretly peeked inside his lunchbox. Seeing the inedible food, their hearts filled with sorrow. Without hesitation, they replaced it with portions of their own meals and left before he returned. When the boy opened his lunchbox, he was stunned to find proper food. He realized someone had seen his secret. Though grateful, he could not bear the thought of being pitied. That day, instead of eating, he silently walked to where the others sat. But when he asked who had replaced his food, no one admitted it. Overcome with grief, he left his meal untouched. This continued for days. Each time he left his lunchbox, the girls would replace its contents, and each time he refused to eat. Eventually, he figured out who had been helping him. Though he appreciated their kindness, he felt unworthy of their concern. His life had been filled with sorrow, and he saw no escape from his suffering. One day, he approached one of the girls, the one he held closest to his heart, and asked, "If you had to choose between me and your clothing, which would you pick?" She blushed and answered, "I would choose you." "Then bring me your skirt and a black top," he requested. Confused but trusting him, she did as he asked. He put on the garments, then took the cap of her water container and placed it near his mouth like a beak. Without another word, he began climbing a tall tree. From the highest branches he called down, "How do I look?" A strange unease settled in the girl's heart. "Please come down," she pleaded. "This isn't right." But he only climbed higher. When he reached the very top, he sat on a branch, and before her eyes, his form began to change. Feathers covered his body, his arms became wings, and his voice turned into the sharp cry of a bird. The girl gasped in horror. "Come back," she cried. "Come down." But the transformation was complete. He had become a great hornbill. With one final glance at her, he spread his wings and soared into the sky. As he flew away, his voice carried through the wind. "Once a year, I will return. When you hear the hornbills flying, step outside. I will be the last in the flock, and if you look up, I will drop a feather for you." The girl wept as she watched him disappear. Time passed, and she eventually married, though she never forgot the boy who had become a bird. One day, as she stood outside her home, she heard the rhythmic beating of wings overhead. Looking up, she saw a flock of hornbills gliding across the sky. At the very end of the formation flew the last bird, the largest of them all. Just as he had promised, a beautiful feather drifted down to her feet. She picked it up and kept it safe. And from that day forward, her household prospered. Her fields yielded abundant harvests, and fortune followed her family. But the boy's cruel stepmother, who had also witnessed the feather fall, greedily cried out, "Give me something too." At that moment, a bird flying overhead let out a loud squawk and dropped something onto her face. It was not a feather, but something far less pleasant. Blinded and humiliated, she stumbled away in shame. To this day, the hornbill is considered a bird of great fortune among the Nagas. Its presence a reminder of love, kindness, and the power of transformation.
お電話ありがとうございます。